Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This Dendrobium Nobile hybrid prima donna with the white spots in the pot is annoying me. I don't know whether the treatment I did has actually killed it, but it's annoying me because I can still see it. And it all seems to be stuck to the edges of the pot rather than in the media. I can't tell whether it's in the media as well. But this Nobile's got to its end of growing season, basically. All of the canes now have their terminal leaf, so it's not going to grow anymore. It'll still swell up a bit, but it's not going to grow on anymore and produce new leaves, so it's sort of finished for the year, really. And as a consequence of that being a Nobile, it'll be allowed to totally dry in between watering. Yeah? And the watering will be reduced from an absolute drowning to just some water when I water it, so that it gets the reduced watering, but I don't want these canes to start desiccating or shriveling, so it'll still get some water and occasionally get a very light feed. I don't stop feeding mine completely, and my theory behind that, against the grain, is that from somewhere this plant has got to produce enough energy to be a mass of blooms in the spring. Well, it's got to get that from somewhere. And my theory is, if it doesn't get any food, a little bit of food, it's going to drain the energy of the plant quite dramatically to produce those blooms. So I like to add a little bit in. Only a small amount, but just keep it ticking over during the winter rather than stopping completely. But anyway, I'll get myself set up in the kitchen, because stage 2 of the treatment is to get it out of the pot, but desperately try and avoid actually having to repot it. I want to disturb the root system as little as possible, so I'll get set up in the kitchen and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so the idea is to gently tease it out of its pot, and hopefully the root ball will not fall apart, but I have no guarantee. It's very tightly packed. It has produced a hell of a root system this year, and I'm hoping that root system will hold the root ball intact. That's if it's going to come out. Oh, that really is in there. That's good, but it probably means it's being held in by attached roots in places. It could just be that the root ball has expanded so much it's just tight. Come on. I suppose there is a theory. Oh God. I have a shed load of roots hanging out the bottom of the pot, and that's what's holding it in, I think. Let me have a look, a better look. Yeah, I've got a hell of a root mass hanging out the bottom of the pot. So I may be able to tease these. Yeah, see, some of them have come out of the bottom of the pot and grown back in another hole, back up into the pot, so they've formed like little loops. Some of them are actually attached as well. But in the main, I think that's what's holding it in place. Let's see if I can tease them into a position where they'll pull up through. Now, I've lost a little bit of bark off the top of the pot by tipping it over, but that's not a big deal, because that can easily be replaced. There we go. See, it was just the ones on the bottom of the pot. Right. Oh, absolutely stinks of mushrooms. So it is mould. So I was right on that front. It's not insects or bugs of any sort. It is actually mould. And in theory, it might not even be that damaging, but I don't want it. I want it gone. So the idea now is, let's just have a look around the root ball. Yeah, see, there's a few pieces of bark like that are absolutely covered in white mould. Am I going to get away with not a full repot? I'm not sure I will actually. Just looking at it, there are some pieces of bark into the media, into the pot, that have got white mould on them. So what do I do? Really don't want to dig this out of the media. Okay, well, most of the mould is on the outside. I can see that just by looking. Now I think what I'm going to do is any pieces of bark I can see have actually got mould on them, I'm going to tease those out, just literally pick them out until I can't see any more. See, there's little tiny fibrous things in the pot, and that's the mould spreading. I mean, this might not even be a harmful mould. You know, I mean, if you think about the my Scots pine bonsai, that pot is full of mould. It's beneficial mould, microxylo or something, I forget. But it's there for a reason. It actually enables the roots to take on nutrients better. But that's a conifer tree outdoors. It's not one of my orchids in my grow room. My worry will always be, if I don't deal with this properly, I'm going to end up having to water this one separately, because obviously if there's any spores that are alive in this root ball and my sharing water, I'm going to pour it into other pots, aren't I? So I've got to not do that. Who knows, I may have already done it. But this is a little outbreak, you know, it wasn't there and then it suddenly was. But it is in the media. I really don't want to dig this whole thing out. Decisions. Well, for the sake of the plant, quite honestly, I think I need to repot it. It's got a hell of a root system, it should adapt. The problem being that obviously it's slowing down for the winter now. The root growth is going to stop to a greater extent. It won't stop completely. I mean, there's still signs of new roots coming out of the base of the canes. But I really didn't want to disturb this. I think I'm going to have to. I can see that there's mouldy bits of bark in the pot, you know, right in there. And those little white strands, yeah, they're in there. It's going to have to be totally repotted. So obviously that's a clean-up job. For me, that will be a spray with hydrogen peroxide while I've got the root ball out, because there is some algae on the roots as well, and hopefully that will kill that off, because I don't know whether a fungicide kills algae. In theory it might do, but I've got no guarantee. But I know the hydrogen peroxide does. So completely clean the root ball off, spray with hydrogen peroxide to deal with the algae, and then completely spray the root mass with the fungicide, and then repot it in brand new bark that hasn't got any mould on it, and just hope that no spores survive. And even if they do, they may well have an environment that's not conducive for their growth, shall we say. I mean, obviously this has been watered heavy all through the season, so it's stayed quite moist, and this has got a hold quite badly, in fact, and I don't want it in other pots. So complete repot and a clean up and some additional treatment. So I'll get on with that. I can't film that really, because all of those jobs are two-handed jobs. Yeah, so I'll get on with that, and I'll be back a bit later. Okay, that's the worst of it washed out up down the sink. That was hard work. That's nearly half an hour running under the tap to get. I need all the bark out this time. Normally I'm quite happy for bits of older bark stuck to roots. It's better than breaking the root trying to get it off, but in this case it's all got to come off. I've now got a hand pick through the base of the plants to make sure there's none left. There are still a few little pieces left. But you know, I can now get at it properly, so the fungicide will get to every part of the base of that plant, including any odd bits of bark that might be left. The sad bit was how many root tips were in what I've just thrown away, but there are plenty more. With a root mass like that, quite honestly, if I lost half of them, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Prefer not to, obviously. So anyway, there are some dead roots near the centre of the plant here. To ease repotting, I am actually going to trim that very carefully with my fine point scissors. I'm just going to go over gently, just easing the roots out, look for the dead ones, trim them off as close to the base as I can, which will leave space in the root ball, which will help me get the media into every part of that root ball, because this is dense. It's going to be difficult to repot this and not leave huge air gaps. So the more of the older roots I can get out, and they are old roots, they're hanging off of those really old canes in the centre of the plant. And while I'm at it, I just as well do this plant and trim off the older dead canes that I don't want, which will be most of them, quite honestly. With the amount of new growth on here, they don't need the support of the older canes. And I've probably got half a dozen old canes on here that have completely finished blooming. They'll never bloom again. They've used every single node up the cane. And once a node's used on a Nobile, it won't bloom on that node again. So you can tell when a cane's finished. You know, you'll have the stumps of where the blooms were. So, a really good go at this one. Right at the wrong time of year. I'm annoyed, but I don't want to lose the plant. The plant comes first. Leaving that mould in all through the winter can't possibly have done the plant any good. So I'll be glad to see the back of it, I hope. But literally with a spray fungicide on every single part of this root system, after I've cleaned up the old roots. No point spraying old roots and then cutting them off, is there? That's a waste of chemicals. So I'll get on with that, and I'll be back when effectively it's ready to repot. That'll be a while. Okay, that was hard work. Very hard work. Probably around a third of the root ball was cut away, and this is what's left. So although I was worried about setting this plant back, I am far less worried now. Now the whole root ball got sprayed with hydrogen peroxide and left for a bit. That then got rinsed off under the tap. Reason for that. And then the whole lot got sprayed with my fungicide, and that got left for a bit. And then the whole lot got rinsed off, because obviously I'm going to touch it. And I don't do gloves, I don't possess any gloves. But I would recommend, if you're messing with root balls that have got chemicals on, get some gloves. Or be stupid like me and don't get gloves. I've trimmed off the old canes. That doesn't show because that's at the top of the plant. And there are some good new roots pushing out at the base of some of this year's canes still, even at this time of year. So I think I've done okay. I think that root ball is going to be successful. That's my theory. Now I've got this in exactly the same size pot. The only difference is this one's clean and sterile, the other one isn't. And for some reason it's got some sellotape on it. Ah, that was where it was in a pack of 10. That was what was holding them together. But anyway, I'm starting with a new pot effectively, so it's clean. This is going to get potted in large bark, and that's all. This is a good root system that likes some air around the roots, likes to be able to dry off, and it's certainly that time of year. This is not a good time to repot a Nobile. But it was a needs must. So that's what's left on the plant. I can't get it in shot. I'll film it after. That's the easiest way. Now, gently tease all the roots into the pot, and this is going to be very difficult to get the media in to this root ball. Very difficult. Very difficult indeed. There's going to be some air gaps. Now, logically, if this went in a larger pot, it wouldn't be so much of a problem, but most Dendrobiums, including Nobiles, like to be snug. They don't like giant pots. But there's going to be air gaps, there just is. It's just how it's going to be. But is there another way of doing this? I'm going to have an awful lot of air gaps, aren't I? Well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to have to put little bits in at a time and just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And gently push them down. And try and tease them into as many gaps as possible. It's not going to be possible to get all of the air gaps filled in. It's just too big a root ball. The big root ball's a bonus, yes, but the downside is there's going to be some air gaps. I just have to do the best I can, I suppose. That's all any of us can do. But I'm not going to put too much in down this side because it will push the plant over to the other side, and then I won't have any space left to get some bark down. So I'll just keep turning it and having another go, basically. This plant's so big it's bashing against the kitchen units. What you often end up with a root ball like this when you repot it is you've got your crocking media at the base, and then as you push down the sides you end up with quite a lot of roots in a mass just above the crocking media that effectively has very little bark within it. But that's where most of the growing root tips are. You know, there's some at the base of the canes, they're brand new ones, and the others were right down the bottom of the other pot. So the fact that they're all squashed together on top of the crocking media, which in this case is exactly the same as the rest of the media, they've got something to go straight into. I've got a very large air gap here. This is where the old roots were, and a lot of those were trimmed off. It's the oldest part of the plant round the back. There's about half a bag of Orchiata gone. So I have to think about ordering some more. My good friend Peter White, who I believe is the only UK supplier of the Orchiata bark, as far as I know, he thinks we could have difficulties getting it, because what's happening is obviously this comes from New Zealand, I believe, originally, and it comes over into Europe in bulk, like in 30 pallets at a time. It's half a shipload. But it comes over like that to a depot, and then everybody buys it from there. And what he said's happening lately is as soon as some of the larger orchid nurseries get wind of a large shipment of 30 pallets, they order 10 of them. And the depot that they come into, the guy there has spent a lot of money getting it and getting it shipped and everything else that goes with that. And as far as he is concerned, he doesn't care who buys it. He just wants it gone. And when it's gone, he orders some more. And it takes another few months for it to arrive. So what's happening is that the smaller suppliers, that, you know, perhaps just buy smaller amounts, by the time they get round to getting at it, it's already gone. He thinks he might have a bit of trouble going on into next year. So it might be in short supply, or shorter supply. I'm sure he'll get some. There, now you can see what I was getting at. You see there's a layer here. I can't get down to there. I can't get bark to go down into those gaps. Well, I can if I do it. Actually I can. If I do it one finger at a time and just in a couple of places. But I'm going to end up crushing those roots if I'm not careful, so I would rather just let them find where they want to go, if you see what I mean. And they will find the media. I don't think I'm going to get much more bark in there, quite honestly. That is incredibly tight. But it's a hell of a plant to try and hold upright. So that's about it. I don't want to force any more in. I've got one little job to do. I'm not going to water this. These roots have had so much liquid poured on them, washed under the tap and everything like that. They're absolutely soaking, so they don't need any more water at the moment. So I'll give them a chance to just settle before I water again. That's about the best I can do. Now, some people might worry about that. I'm not that worried about that. I've watched Nobiles, and a lot of the new root growth heads for the gaps rather than the dense bits, if you know what I mean. So they have a tendency to head for air spaces anyway. So leaving a couple is not the end of the world. Right, let me just show you. Yeah, you can probably see that from there. This is where all the old canes were. So this is the oldest part of the plant. This would be the bit of the plant that I bought a few years ago. Yeah? And it's grown out that way, and that way. You see there's new roots in places here, so I'm quite pleased there is still active root growth. You know, the plant has migrated away from the oldest part of the plant, and I've left a couple of older canes on. I've left this one because it's still got some leaves and it may still shoot out lower down. It's bloomed from here upwards. Yeah, that's probably off camera. I'm talking to myself here. Yeah, the easiest way to go over this plant is to take it in on the dining room table where we started, and then I can hold the camera in my hand and just go over and we'll have a look at it. Is that a bug? No. Bit of dust. Paranoid. Okay, I'll break off there and we'll have a look at the plant. Okay, so we still have a very large plant, but what we have now are some of last year's canes that have bloomed in the main, but not completely yet. All of this year's canes, obviously. There's a little one in there. Didn't grow as well as the others. And some that have, you know, still got leaves and have some stumps where they bloomed before, but they've still got plenty more places to bloom. Plus all this year's canes haven't bloomed at all. They should all bloom in the spring. So we have a large empty space in the centre of this plant. That's where the old canes were. And now they're gone, which means I can now get some stakes against these older canes. Yeah? And what I'll do is I'll stake the cane upright in the pot directly against that cane, Dendrobium cane. So there'll be a cane tied against that cane, nice and upright. Yeah, but the cane will be hidden, because then what I'll do is I'll start to pull these in, yeah, and make the plant upright again, and try and spread these canes evenly in a nice circle, so that there is the outside of one of these new canes pointing in all directions. And with any luck, that means the blooms will be on the outside of the plant and not buried in the middle where you can't see them. So that's what I'll be doing. I've just got to put some cinnamon on these chopped off canes just to make sure we don't get any rot setting in, but it doesn't normally happen with Dendrobiums. They're pretty sturdy plants, but you know, just to dry those old stumps off. and then we'll go from there, and I'll get this staked up and ready for the blooms in the spring, basically. That was always the plan on the cards, you know, was to take the old canes out and have a go at straightening the plant up and adjusting the canes into a position where the plant is upright and all the canes face outwards. That's the theory I have. So I'll get on and do that bit, and that's ready for the spring then. And give that a few days, and then I'll give it a good water, because the new Orchiata bark is a bit dusty. But the first couple of waterings just wash the dust straight out the bottom of the pot, so it's not a big deal. You could pre-wash it if you like, but then you've got it wet. Yeah? And where are you going to put it while it's wet? I don't like potting with wet media. If this media had still been damp and wet, all the pieces would have stuck to each other and started sticking to roots, and I wouldn't have got anywhere near as much down near the bottom of the pot. It's just harder work if the media is moist. Simple as that. Do it dry, then water it. Makes life easier. And you get into a lot more crevices and cracks with dry media, bark anyway, than you do when it's wet. So that's that one done for today. I probably won't stake that today. Quite honestly, I've been working on this plant nearly all morning, and I haven't done watering or anything yet. I've just been solidly working on one plant. But I think it's worth it, and hopefully it'll still put on a good show in the spring. There's plenty of roots left on that plant. Although that will be a bit of a setback, it won't be much, because it had such a good root system. If that had had a poor root system, that would have set that plant back. But hopefully I've got away with it. Okay, see you next time.